We're joined by Justin Matejcek. He's an Army veteran and founder of Veterans Adventure Group. It's a nonprofit. It's based in Tennessee that takes combat veterans on extreme sports trips across the country to help reacclimate into society. So, Justin, tell us a little bit about your organization and how it helps.
Yeah, so Veterans Adventure Group, ultimately our goal is to use extreme sports to restore that teamwork and purpose with veterans. As you know, veterans tend to thrive in these chaotic and extreme environments. And we found that by putting them back in these environments, they really rise to the occasion. And they really, this whole different version of themselves come out where they're very confident and in charge. And a lot of times in the civilian world, you just don't get that atmosphere. And so we use that small team mentality, similar to what we did in the military, where we get back out in these extreme environments and we're forced to rely on our team and our training and our own knowledge to essentially get through and push on to the next challenges. And I can kind of talk about my time coming back home too, just to kind of help segue into what a lot of veterans feel. But I got back from Afghanistan in 2011, and I was in a college classroom within about 6 months or so from being in country. And it was a really tough transition for me. And it wasn't necessarily about what happened overseas. It was more about what happened when I came back. And, when you're in the military, you're surrounded by, very close team members. You're doing something that matters to you, and you have that purpose, you have that mission. And you get back and you don't have any of that. And for me, there was one moment where it was so rough, where I was refusing to drink alcohol and all that, because that just kind of went down a whole different path. And one night in my misery, I sat down at my kitchen table and I made a list of everything that was bothering me. And I was able to summarize that list into a lack of teamwork and a lack of purpose. And ultimately, I realized that there are so many veterans out there just like me that may not have any kind of medical or mental diagnosis from the VA, but they're still lacking something in their life. And so I would argue a lot of times it's not even the experiences from overseas that really bother us. It's more of coming back to this environment and you don't have that tight-knit team around you anymore. And you want to have that purpose. And a lot of that, I would argue, being part of a team gives you purpose. When you're in a rope team on the side of Mount Rainier, you know that you have to perform, because if you don't, everyone else in that rope team is also at risk. Very similar to being in combat, where you have to rely on that training, the teamwork, and your equipment to get through. Yeah, so we have a lot of different teams, essentially what we call it, that specialize in different areas. So ultimately, our main thing is mountaineering. And that comes from the reason I started this nonprofit in the first place was on my second tour in Afghanistan, my vehicle had an IED and my driver lost his leg. And in that moment, we made a promise that we'd climb Mount Rainier together. And this was literally as the medevac was coming in. We decided we'd climb Mount Rainier together when we got back, And so I got out with a mission of working with veterans, especially wounded ones at this time, and get them in the mountains. And as I started doing this, I got into other activities too, such as skydiving and all that. And I found that tight-knit community again. And so with that, mountaineering is kind of our flagship thing. We do a lot of climbs on Mount Rainier every year. We also do scuba diving, we do caving, we do skydiving, and that goes into actually getting veterans their actual Class A license so they can jump solo. We also do kiteboarding. We even have a drag racing team, and we do rock climbing. We also have an adaptive component that they do ski clinics and all that out in Colorado using like the sleds and all that. And they also do weekend retreats, and they get out on the boats and do wakeboard and all that stuff. So we have a wide array of activities that kind of can meet the veteran where they're at and what their interest is. Like for the drag racing guys, if they would rather just sit around and break wrenches, that's a good option for them.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, if they're looking for something a little bit more intense, we can throw you out of an airplane with a perfectly good parachute and it's on you, So there's a lot of different options. And ultimately our goal is to, again, get veterans back in that environment where their decisions have an effect, whether it be serious injury or life or death. But that, again, veterans always rise to the occasion when we put them back in that environment. So that's kind of our goal.
Yeah. No, I mean, Justin, this is a fantastic program. I encourage people, there's it right there on the bottom of the screen, veteransadvantagegroup.org. Please go there. Justin, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you having me on.